I've noticed that most people, when they want to explain something to someone or teach someone something, they try to withhold some knowledge. You are not helping yourself, to be honest. Nobody can steal what you've read. Explain everything. Don't hoard any knowledge. I promise you, as you're explaining, you get a better understanding. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Faith and I'm consecrated. I'll be sharing a reading technique for you to finish reading your books on time. If you're preparing for an examination, test, or just reading for your personal development. It is a technique I've been using for a long time now. I started using it when I was in SS3, and I believe that it will help you as well. I don't really have a name for it because I just came about the method. It's just my method of reading. So it was like some months ago I discovered that there's actually a name for it. And to be honest, I did not even know beforehand that that was the name for it. There are some differences in my own approach and the approach I got online. I'm going to first explain my own technique of reading and explain the other technique I found out online. So yeah, let's get straight into it. I tend to postpone my reading, my preparation to few days before the exam, and it's not something I would advise anyone to do. Yes, I would not advise you to do, because most of the time I found out that this material was not actually that hard if I had started reading earlier. But I guess that's just it. It was just God's grace that saw me through, and I was able to finish with a 4.0. I'm going to be switching my camera pretty soon. When you're studying for an examination or you are reading a material that you need to get a good knowledge of, if you're studying for an examination, a test, a defense, a proposal, first thing I'll say is give yourself enough time to prepare. Preparation is just the best thing. It kills fear, it kills doubts. So just prepare before, and that's the first thing I'll say. You get the material you want to study, and what I would suggest doing is you write the outline. So it's like you preparing a scheme of work, but not as a teacher now, but as a student. All the topics you've covered. And in some situations, because not all lecturers will teach you everything, but they will bring out the question in the exam. So what are you going to do? Get the topics. Then what do you do after getting all those topics? They can be up to 20, 25, they can be 10, they can be 5. No matter the number, just write them out. So this is Sociology of Entrepreneurship. So I have 14 topics for this particular semester. This is number 1, meaning, types and importance of entrepreneurship. Number 2, growth and so on, just like that. So this is what I mean when I say you should write out the topics, the outline. You don't have to go into details, just write it like this. Then what do? You look at all the topics from the beginning to the end. And this part is important. Minimize the material in your head. I don't know how to explain this part. Don't maximize it, no matter how much it looks. If it looks cumbersome, minimize it in your head. Just look at it and say, oh, it's not that much. Now, I'm not saying you should minimize it for you to procrastinate again, but minimize it first for you to be able to get a grasp of everything you want to do. It's very important. This will kill fear. Then go through those topics. They say, okay, these are all the topics I'm preparing to read. Now, if your lecturer has not given materials on everything, check for different materials, different websites on Google. And after getting your materials, you will set this paper aside. We're just going to cut this. Once you do that, you start with each topic for that course. I'm a sociology student, so I'll be using SOC. Probably SOC 405. You write your course, and then we start to break down what we want to read. And let me show you samples of what I have here. SOC 417, communication. SOC 418. The theory I've been studying recently, and that's social comparison theory. You are going to be paraphrasing here, but paraphrasing in your own words and terms that are as simple as possible. So, social comparison theory. I'm just going to write it here. Social Compare. Your writing does not have to be perfect as long as you can see it. Just manage your lines. Introduced by Leon Festinger, 1954. What's the next thing? They say it describes the comparison processes people utilize to evaluate their action. So I will just write in my own words. People value or assess their self-worth in comparison to others. As simple as possible. I don't have to write it word for word from what I've gotten here. I'll just write it in the best way I understand it. So the next one, we all compare ourselves to others in our social worlds, whether by comparing our looks to those of celebrities. In psychology, social comparison theory is one explanation for this tendency. We have to make comparison between ourselves and others. People compare themselves with others online and physically. I believe you get an idea of what I'm trying to say. You just write the basic information that you need. And we take a look at this. This is conflict theory. Introduction to sociology. Conflict theory, we have the functionalism theory, conflict theory, and symbolic interactionism. Society is made up of individuals competing for limited resources. So you use it in words that you yourself will understand. I just used INDS to stand for individuals competing for limited resources. Some cases you might not be able to cover all the outline. This is why it is important to go to lectures, because when you go, you know the ones that your lecturers are going to emphasize on. And even if you don't go to lectures, because there are sometimes you have to stop class, you can assume which one seems more important, but this is very risky. So I'll just advise it's better you go for your lectures and get a better understanding and a better knowledge of what the lecturers will tend to focus more on. Like I mentioned before, there was a technique I later found similar to what I used to prepare for my examination, and it's called the Feynman technique. It was brought about by Matt Feynman. He formulated this technique for reading, for learning. And the thing about the Feynman technique is not only to learn, but to learn and to understand. This is not teaching you how to cram, but teaching you to learn a concept and to understand it. A number of people have been using that technique in preparing for examinations and other academic related activities. But this is just something I found out last month, and I saw that it was kind of similar to what I would do. First thing is you have to choose a concept to learn, study the technique, you read it like just normal reading. Then after reading, what do? You get someone to teach, or you teach it to yourself. And this was something I also adopted, which actually works for me. I would teach it to myself, but later I had a friend who would ask me, okay, please explain these points to me, explain this to me. So I would explain to her. Then anytime we're having tests or examinations, it was just an automatic thing. She would come to me, explain, I would explain. I would have read beforehand, and she would come some days after or some hours later that day, and I would explain to her. And I found out that in explaining to her, it gave me a better understanding. And in some situations where she's not around for me to explain to, I explain it to myself. And this is different from cramming. I'm not saying you should cram. You explain it to yourself. Try to get a good understanding of what you are trying to read. And as time went by, I would explain to her. Before I knew it, I would explain to other people. In the long run, I would explain to many other people. They would just come to my room. I would have read the material in advance, and they would come later. We would have all picked a date and a time we would meet, and it was just like a tutorial, but yeah, just in the hostel instead of going outside. I would explain it to them, and in explaining to them, I would understand it much better. And now, in explaining, do not keep information, do not keep knowledge. I've noticed that most people, when they say they want to explain something to someone or teach someone something, they try to withhold some knowledge. You are not helping yourself, to be honest. You are not helping yourself. Nobody can steal what you've read, Explain everything. Don't hoard any knowledge. Don't hoard anything you've read. Explain every single thing. And I promise you, as you're explaining, you get a better understanding. There are some times where I would explain to people, and to be honest, before explaining it, I myself did not understand the concept of what I was reading. But in explaining, it would open my understanding. Then I'll be like, oh, this is what this actually meant. But I would not say it to them because they believe I understand, whereas I did not understand. But in explaining, reading the material and explaining it to them, it gave me a better understanding of that material that I was reading. So you find someone to teach it to, or you teach it to yourself. Then the next one is you review it. That is, you go back to your material. When you're teaching the person, you might not really take a hold of your material. You're teaching them basically from what you understand. So now, after teaching or teaching yourself, you go back to the material to check whatever it is you might have missed or some things that you did not touch. And when you go back to it, you try to review it, get a better understanding, like just adding to the knowledge you have prior. Now, after reviewing that material, then you now simplify it in your own words. And what I tend to do is I tend to give examples that I will understand in my own concepts. If I'm reading on social learning theory, I try to understand the main concept of what social learning theory is talking about, and I formulate examples on my own. For the Feynman technique, it just comprises of 4 steps. The first is choose a concept to learn, study, you teach it to someone or you teach it to yourself, then you review what has been taught, you review your material that you read, then you simplify it to your own words. So if we're going to break it down into 4, it will be study, teach, review, simplify. I'm going to say it again: study, teach, review, simplify. This is what I'll be reading from when I'm teaching myself or teaching the next person. After teaching, I'll come back to it to review it, either to add more points or to go on with what I've read and just try to remind myself of some other points. Whenever I'm going for the exam, I don't carry my books along. I don't even take my material with me. I just go with this. I go with this to refresh my memory, and it always helps. It always helps, and I'm able to explain to others as well. So even if there is new information to add, I just add it along the line. But this is what I go with to prepare when I'm going to the exam, or when we are still waiting. This is what I read over and over again instead of carrying the whole material and getting confused. This is a simplified way, and you can make it more simplified for yourself. That's just basically it about the Feynman technique. I hope you've learned 1 or 2 things from the techniques I showed you for reading, and I honestly hope that you put them to practice. And send me your comments and your feedback. It might work for some, it might not work for some, but if it works for you, let me know. If it does not work for you, let me know as well. So thank you for joining me today. See you in the next one. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Once again, I am Faith the Consecrated. Bye.